Welcome to this episode of the Strong Kind Podcast. This week's episode is with Zak Gabor. Zak is a doctor of physical therapy. He's a mentor. He's an educator. He's a really good dude. We had a great discussion on physical therapy, pain, rehab, what it means to be an educator in the physical rehab space and just in the rehab space. It was a great discussion. Had a lot of fun talking to Zak. I hope you enjoy it. Check it out on Spotify and watch it on YouTube. If you enjoy it, give it a good review. If you don't, give me some feedback and I'll work on it. All right. Peace. Have a good one. So, Zak, just tell me, me and you, we harp on the same stuff over and over again. Do you ever get tired of like trying to combat crappy narratives in the health space?
Yes, I do get tired of it.
What do you wish would happen?
uh, I wish that medical providers and the medical and rehab industry as a whole would just take more ownership over the fact that we have a duty to provide more informed, responsible narratives.
I think,
So
yeah.
that would be
What
my
do you
wish.
think? What do you think stems the crappy narratives out there? Is it just not updating, or is it
So
like malevolence?
no, it's so like I'm big into, even when we think about upstream factors in rehab and things like social determinants of health, it's like what are, shitty narratives is the symptom of something. So like where is it coming from? And so when I think about the root causes of it, it's, from a societal level, a biomedical paradigm, like what we all kind of are taught in school and what we all kind of know societally, like it makes a ton of sense. So at superficial level, it makes so much fucking sense to think about the body as a machine and buy into some of these narratives that we all loathe these days. But I think from a surface level, it's just understanding, okay, that was kind of the best of what we had. It spread like wildfire and makes a ton of sense on a pop culture level. So it's just deeply, deeply, deeply rooted. And then beyond that, from a more like a smaller world level, our medical schooling is deeply entrenched in a biomedical paradigm. And I think the bigger issue is just like the core values of academia, and not just academia, like literally think about how I feel like a fucking conspiracy theorist, like where it's like think about how we're schooled at a young age, but it's like we're taught to never question anything. But it's like it's true. Like we're literally conditioned away from questioning things. We're conditioned away from questioning authority. We're rewarded for kind of doing well and what we're taught and not challenging the norm. And so you kind of combine some of those core values of like just going along with it, not questioning things, and this deeply embedded model of biomedicine. And it's like, I think that's why it's still perpetuated. And the fact that we're graduating 10,000 plus PTs every year that are getting taught this model, it's like creates this wildly complex problem to solve.
Yeah, and it's also it has to be. I don't know. Do you think it has to be solved at an individual level, like person to person, or do you think like at least in the
That's
beginning?
well, yeah, that's my bias because at the end of the day, it's like, what do you have control over? It's like I don't have control over like the powers that be,
Hmm.
but I have control over myself. Um, that was the whole notion behind Level Up when we started it in 2018 was like we just want to individually inspire as many people as we can so that they can role model and inspire the next generation under them. So yeah, it was kind of approaching it from more of an individual level.
Yeah, I mean, and like, I think that's just how I think about. I just literally was at a coffee shop working, and which I think you were too. So shout out to coffee shops for
Yep,
fueling
shout
the
out.
mission. But I was talking to talking. It was actually she's actually like she's in my family. She's like my cousin, and we were briefly just talking about how things were going, and you just get a grasp for like people. Me and you think about this probably way too much, right? And she is not medically trained, but she's
Right.
like I mentioned something about because my wife's doing more pelvic floor therapy, pre and postnatal care, and she's like, this stuff was just never available. And we briefly got into like some of the social determinants of health and like supporting women through pregnancy, and she's like, I just never thought about it that way. Like you just go to an
Yeah.
appointment and they like fix it for you, or they don't. I'm like,
Sure.
yeah, like unfortunately, that's not how most of this works, right? So like let's go to level up because I love the clinical athlete level up like mission. I don't know if I
Yep.
can't say your mission statement, but I love it.
Neither can I, but we know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And but like the notion of like leveling up as like a clinician and a human, like what did stem that for you, or what was that like? Where did that
Yeah.
come from?
It kind of, a core mantra of mine and ours is like know better, do better.
Yeah,
And it's like we have this obligation, we have this like social and moral obligation to level up because it's the right thing to do. Like I mean, it's literally been 50 fucking years since George Engel's paper on a need for a new medical model came out, where people have been advocating not to do away with biomedicine, but to expand on it. And we're here 50 years later, still teaching the same shit. And so it's like for us, it's like know better, do better. Like we know better. Like we clearly know better. Some of the biggest guidelines, like the Lancet's call to action in 2018, that series like lays out a very clear steps of like action we can take to do better. And so that's really where that came from is you know, leveling up.
yeah, yeah. Kobe, just get better. I
Well,
just
an initiative was a really important word in it too, because it's like it's not easy to like challenge yourself. It's not easy to challenge the status quo. And so it's like you need to take initiative in order to do that.
yeah. Well, and it's I think just I mean, we can get in. We're gonna get into the power of language for both like marketing and other
Yeah.
in healthcare in a little bit. But that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. But like, it's really hard because we've both been through like, hey, I want this to be fixed. I really am into the idea of working on people with my hands. Like, dude, the day that we were gonna do like the subtalar mob and like improve ankle dorsiflexion was the day I went to PT school for. I was gonna unlock my ankle mobility. I was gonna become a 500
Yeah.
pound squatter overnight. And then I realized like this is nothing special. And I'm
Well,
like, go
yeah,
ahead.
even like no, I think of examples like someone coming in with chronic back pain and it's like, oh, I just need to find the facet that's hypo or hypermobile, and we either need to mobilize or stabilize it, and that should resolve your pain.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, from a superficial level, it makes a ton of sense. But the reality is that it is way more complex than that in a good way, where like
Yes.
a straightforward linear relationship like that, it just doesn't pan out that way.
Yeah. And even if it's not the good way, because I think me and you we've shifted our language about it's good that it's complicated, which like we kind of think that, but like it's the reality of it. And I'd rather embrace reality and like help you understand the complexity that is the fact that you're a human with, biological like societal influences, like cognitive influences,
Yeah.
emotional, spiritual needs,
Hmm.
creative needs. Like, dude, I tell some of my clients like you need to go paint or like listen to music or like have some
Yeah.
fun, in a creative way. And it's kind of wild because like they've never had somebody tell them that, and they also just they see how it positively affects like their emotional stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like I think what we go to school. I mean, we all like I wanted to be a hero so bad, dude. I wanted to be
Yeah.
either I almost went to medical school because I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL because I wanted to be the hero, right? And then you like shit, like I don't get to actually be the hero. The person gets to be the hero, right? And
Yeah.
like letting go of that and just being the guide or being, like you think of Disney's Hercules, like we're literally that guy with the hooves instead of Hercules. And like that's hard for people to grasp, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like but when you went through that phase, like was there resistance to it or was there
Oh, yeah. I mean, like that's why like one of the biggest books we recommend people reading is Being Wrong by Catherine Scholes, because there's levels of being wrong where it's like learning about, I think this was on like a You Are Not So Smart podcast, but it's like you take a more superficial topic like, is using paper or plastic better for the environment? And you're like, it's definitely paper, and you're like, actually, it's plastic, and you're like, oh, okay, I can change my mind about that if I'm presented with good evidence. But if it's something that challenges like your core identity, where like my core identity as a physical therapist was about hinged on my ability to resolve people's pain with my specific techniques and specific thought process that was going to like, solve for X and fix them. When that got challenged, that was really, really hard to confront. And you do go kind of through the 5 stages of mourning, maybe not in that same order, but like there's anger, there's resent, there's despair, and then ultimately you come out the other side better for it. But yeah, really, really, really challenging pill to swallow. And I think also just on that is also coming out the other side where again there's I think our profession and as humans, we're really good at polarizing things. And like when we learn something new, we like swing hard to an interpretation of it. And so it's like, oh, I'm not doing anything special. And it's like, no, like we are doing something really special. And like, yeah, maybe we're not like Hercules, but like we're some badass guides that can really change people's lives for the better. And so it's just reconciling that, I think.
I love it. All right, so with identity, you've posted on this numerous times. I don't I think about it all the time. Like, because I think there's a lot of people who are like, well, am I just a personal trainer if I'm just like prescribing exercise, right? And
Right.
how do you combat that, or like just how do you change the thinking along those lines? Because I'm with you. I really don't give a crap what you call me.
Well,
Just let me help you.
so I think ultimately, like one of the simplest ways that I can describe it is just that exercise is the Trojan horse for delivering a lot of the other variables that I'm interested in influencing.
Yes.
Whereas before, I was more interested in like pain science, like detailed pain science explanations or my specific manual techniques or whatever. Where now it's like I can accomplish a lot of the goals that I want to get out from a rehab perspective simply through the exercise I'm prescribing and the narratives that come along with that. Where from a outside looking in, what you see me do might look exactly the same as a personal trainer. But what's wildly different is like the layers and depth of understanding and the breadth of understanding in terms of like psychologically informed, sociologically informed, biologically informed, and how we're using all of that knowledge to deliver this program. So I think you know that's one way that I would kind of discuss it.
I think the thing that I think about the most is the stuff that I don't do because because of my background and what I've learned from people like you and all sorts of other people. Like Quinn Hennick has been a
Yep.
giant like peer, like mentor that isn't even like a super direct mentor. Like the but like it's the things that I don't tell people about stuff. Like I remember being in on my like rotations, right? And my mentor was doing all sorts of like gosh, what are the techniques where muscle energy techniques, and like just
Nice.
saying like this is doing XYZ, and I would just be like, it feels good, doesn't it? And like, yeah. I'm like, cool. Like, and your pain's a little bit better. Yeah,
Yep.
cool. And I want to like lean into the stuff that empowered me. I was just trying to make sure that they felt empowered. And I think that's because I was fortunately influenced by people like Quinn and the Barbell Medicine crew
Yep.
and you. Like, I think, and like a lot of people, right? Greg Lehman, I'd seen Greg Lehman's stuff before, like, or as I was going through PT school. And it's like, what's this guy talking about? But like, it still felt kind of right, right?
Yeah, definitely.
When it comes to like, wait, because you're starting to actually integrate into a school. I can't remember what school. Like where
Yep.
you're getting
New
into.
York Institute of Technology.
Yeah, so super cool. Does it like blow kids' minds, or does it like make them afraid when you're like teaching this stuff? Are they like, are they on the curve where they're thinking about it more?
No, to be honest, like one of the biggest challenges is that, in our profession, I mean, think about it. Like, let's say on average, there's 50 people graduating from a cohort. How many of those 50 people do you think really give enough shits to like go that extra inch to question things and want to do better than like what is just the kind of basics of what we're being taught? Like, how many do you think out of 50 people would be in that category?
If I'm being really bleak, probably like two.
Yeah, 2 to 5
Yeah.
out of that 50. So we'll say like 5 to 10% at most. of a cohort is like the type of people that kind of have that wanting to go the extra step or wanting to kind of learn differently. And so the biggest challenge we have is like all of these kids are taking a course that they did not sign up for this. They literally are being told that they need to take it. Where historically, when we've done level up, it's all people that are seeking it out and signing up on their own accord. So that's automatically off the rip a huge challenge is like, how do we make it um, a better entry point for them? And so what we did this year was just like we really kind of softened the tone and tried to enter in with a lot more empathy around kind of like what we're doing and why we're doing it. Um, so it's a challenge because I don't know. I think it's probably like I had one kid that came up at the end of, we did an in-person lecture and one kid came up to me at the end and he was like, so like I just got Stu McGill's book. Like, would you recommend that I read it or like should I like I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, you should read it, but take it with a grain of salt. And I'll also expose you to some other things. But yeah, it's a really big challenge. I don't think a lot of people are ready to have like truly grasp the gravity of like the rehab industry and the chasm that needs to be crossed.
Do you think we're just not very like? Do you think it's just our scientific literacy, even amongst like medical professionals, is still? Because dude, I'm not even that great with evidence. It's like I just listen to people who are smarter than me, and then I like try to just basically dumb it down to my level over and over again. And I read research, but like I'm not.
I don't think it's that because
No.
like look at Brent Toothbrush. Like he's spitting literature everywhere.
Hmm.
Um, but it's his interpretation of it and it's whatever quality studies like not to be discussed here. To be honest, I think it's a core at its core. I do think it's a values issue
Yeah.
because we don't truly teach explicitly or role model implicitly these values of humility, critical thinking, changing our minds in on the basis of better information, reconciling differing viewpoints to understand commonalities. Like that's just not a core value of what we do. And so it's not surprising to me that students aren't embracing those behaviors because they're not being role modeled to them. We're just basically role modeled to like learn, memorize, know your shit. Don't really ask questions beyond the basics. And like, yep, that's what we do.
How much do you think it's just that people want it to be a quick fix? The marketplace
I mean,
wants.
that's definitely a big part of it. That's like the culture of America. Like quick fix, no patience, short term satisfaction. I mean, it's also human nature. Like who wants to endure suffering? Like who like thinking about things is a fucking pain in the ass. I understand why people don't want to do it.
It's very true. Very true. All right. Gosh, I mean, I could keep going, but I almost like I don't want to like we're gonna get keep going down the rabbit holes of like what our problems are and stuff. But what type of things like influence you that are not like knowing that like you're in the medical field, like what are the things that like maybe influence you that are not like medical or physical therapy oriented, right? Like I read a lot
Yeah.
of economics stuff, right? Like so like that type of stuff. Or like and I try to like or Nassim Taleb, anti-fragile, like that is not it is a human element thing, but it didn't
Hmm.
come from school, right? So what is stuff like that influences you
Yeah,
that
I guess I would go twofold. Like in an adjacent to physical therapy, I don't know if you would qualify it, but like psychology is just so fascinating to me. So I really have a deep interest in that. So I've done a lot of reading and learning like way beyond what's necessary, but in a way that I think has really informed my practice in a super powerful way. So that's on one end, and then I think on like a totally different end is like comedy. Um, I love like I'm a student of sketch comedy, stand-up comedy, and that's like I think a really important vehicle for the success of our company is how we're integrating in kind of absurdity, satire, sketch comedy. it's such a good way to um break down the walls of like such serious taboo topics. If you're able to successfully like blend in humor, it's such a powerful vehicle for making a statement and advocating for changes.
Yeah. I think so there's this guy named Austin Jokum. He runs a gym in Minneapolis, I think, or the Minnesota area. Um and he's like nobody gives a crap about your studies. But if you put up a good meme that makes somebody think about stuff, like that's how you
Yeah,
change the world, right? And it's
yeah.
like, damn, it's so true.
Modern problems require modern solutions.
100%, right? And I appreciate the take on comedy because it's like when we get to the point where comedians can't be comedians anymore, which maybe is already happening. Like that's when I'm really scared for society, right? When the
Yeah, I
just
feel like I feel like we're balancing back. I feel like we're coming back from the brink of like extreme social sensitivity where it's like again reconciling the necessary sensitivities we need with also like the reality of like having unfiltered commentary that we're allowed to make mistakes, we're allowed to be fallible within a certain context.
yeah. What's leading you that way? Because I'm still scared.
I mean, maybe that's wrong, but I just feel like there's certain comedians that are still kind of just doing their thing, and I respect it a lot because like I like we don't need to go down a fucking rabbit hole talking about cancel culture, but it's like in a way, I feel like that's such a um like that's not a society that I would want to live in because like it conditions us away from making mistakes. It conditions us away from being authentic. It conditions us away from having like real hard conversations about people that see things differently. And so like I really think again it's important to reconcile taking in and being sensitive and mindful of our audience and like all the different types of people in the world and different beliefs and different cultures, but like I mean fuck, if we can't poke fun at ourselves, like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just it's tough, but yeah, I maybe that's just what I'm hoping it goes towards.
I'm hoping it goes towards that way too. And I think it's like yeah, we can get back into the paradox of like when you make pain unacceptable, people cannot accept it, and by not accepting it, you're not actually going to work through it, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right? And it's the same with when we make things that should be acceptable to some degree unacceptable via like taking offense to everything, because there are people out there who just take
Yeah.
offense to everything. And it's
Yep.
like, are you miserable? Like, are you happy at all? Like,
Yeah.
because that is also we can get back into psychology, and I also just think we have to think about like neuroplasticity, right? Like when people you are structurally and functionally like changing your brain when you're always like looking at looking at things in this certain way. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, like I'm reading The Expectation Effect, which is an incredible book, and I've known this stuff from psychology and intuitively, but like literally when someone is critiqued like from a test, they go out in the world and they look at the world in a negative light, right? Like then
Yeah.
they and it's so understanding that can help you realize that okay, this is just like a sucky situation right now, but life is still good, right? And unfortunately, you couple the power of our mind with the power of social media, and it just I think like that is the other hard thing about this stuff is like, and me and you I think are hopeful we're actively on social media to try to convey like some amount of optimism and like use
Yep.
it as a tool, but like most people are just consuming social media because they want entertainment or they want escape.
Right.
So let's touch on that, like social media health, social media like PT,
Hmm.
and the pitfalls of like maybe some of that stuff.
Oof. I mean, I don't know what direction you want to go because that's kind of broad. Like there's a there's a lot of different thoughts in my head about the state of social media PT world.
What's the first one?
I mean, the first like one of the first things I'm kind of tainted because I had a pretty like so in 2015, I'm coming out of school swinging. social media Zach on the come up, simple strength physio, like in that first wave of physios really like creating their own brands and like building a following. And it was just so like for me, I met some really great people, but then it got like so people just fucking playing the game for the wrong reasons, like to pimp an Instagram, where it's like they're in these back DM chats with a massive group where it's like, hey guys, I just posted, go like my post. And then you see them commenting, that's like, haha, great post, Dave. Like, that's such a good back exercise. And I'm like, oh my God, kill me. And to be honest, like, I shut down my account basically because I was like, I'm so done with the fake BS of like people just playing the game just to build an account. So that's one thing that really grinds my gears. But on the flip side of that, I think for people is just to be authentic. Like use it to just be authentic. Don't worry about doing anything other than that. Um, and don't worry about like other people judging you or talking shit. Like as long as you're staying true to yourself, you'll it'll be a useful like use of your time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the biggest thing that I see that people struggle with is like you're just not being yourself, and people can feel that, right?
Oh, 100%.
And then there are people who are they're extremely like fake and their thing grows, but also like
Yep.
that's a prison, in my opinion, right?
Oh, well, I mean, that's not, I mean, right. It's a really interesting, I don't know if it's a paradox, but it's like I have such a negative relationship with kind of like Instagram fame because I associate it with people that are just sellouts. And like that's the last thing I would ever want to be. But the paradox is that in some ways it probably does hold back like the growth and the influence that we can have, but maybe not. We're just taking a longer road to get there.
Yeah. I think it's just being okay with just seeing it for what it is, which is like, you know, posting in a way that gets people to maybe it's just like I hope that over the course if you follow me like over the course of maybe 6 months to a year, like I change your brain a little bit or you change your
Yeah.
mind a little bit about like the capacity for your human body to adapt and for that, pain is not something that has to be debilitating for your whole life and like that there's ways to manage it that are not you know uh that like like invasive just for the sake of being invasive, like a fix, right? But also like,
Yep.
man, like it's just looking at yourself that way is I think we're in this information age, which is super positive from a fact that people have access to information, but it also just creates so much uncertainty and like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And where I do think it was almost like I remember one of my professors when I was in school being like, "Man, the '80s was such a great time. We were just doing one or two stretches and some E stem, and people were getting better. And like, and we just and it's because
Yep.
I think like to some extent it's like because people didn't if they came to physical therapy, which I don't know what percentage would have came to physical therapy. A lot of people probably would have just been sent to an orthopod or just told to just deal with it. But it's like if the person in front of you was trustworthy, you probably believe them that it would get better over 8 to whatever your course of treatment. It's just like going to a chiropractor and like if you don't think
Yeah.
any differently, like you just oh, little relief in symptoms, good. All right, see you next week. Like I think there was trust there. And I always go back to that Voltaire quote. It's like the art of medicine is distracting the patient until
Right.
nature heals them, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if you got anything to add to that. I was just kind of rambling there, but
Um, yeah, no, I mean that's right. That I think that's also part of the like tying back in full circle to like why we're still stuck in a very biomedical lens of rehab is because it quote unquote works. Like people get better with stim and stretching.
yeah,
And it requires cognitive effort to like take something that's working and be like, this is working, but let me think on this for a week and challenge my beliefs and do a better, do a less wrong version of it. It's just like, so I just don't think there's a lot of incentive for people to change their mind
yeah,
because because things seemingly work.
yeah, it's true. And I mean, if it like me and a buddy get together for coffee every month, he's another PT, and we talked about a guy who's around us who he's kind of networked both of us, and he's like he does like 50 adjustments a day. He's a chiropractor. He does like 50 adjustments a day. And
Jesus.
my buddy, so like I'm virtual. Like, if I have, 50 people on my roster, I'm super happy, which I don't think I've ever touched 50 people, and like that would almost, that's probably my limit. But I'm like, I want to see like 50 people a year. And he's like, I want to
Right.
see 10 people a day. And the thing we just kind of got into is like the guy believes in what he's doing so much that, and like that, and it's hard because people also just like, it's a 5-minute appointment. And
Yeah, that's getting into the bigger systems that be too. Like that's the system. Like that's the traditional insurance-based system where his whole model is predicated on 15-minute visits where he can get 4 people in an hour with a certain type of treatment. And like, and what's another, that other cliche quote where it's like it's hard to get a man to change his mind when his job depends on it.
yeah, I mean,
It's like, why would you, like, okay, I have this model that's working, people are getting better, I'm making money.
the hard part for us, and where we were both really just frustrated, is like the fact that he goes to schools, elementary schools, and talks about the need for spinal adjustments for health. And we were
Jeez,
both
that's the
like,
nocebo inception
yeah,
on steroids.
100%. He wears like a superhero outfit,
Oh
evidently.
my god.
So it's like, oh
Oh
man,
boy.
we don't
Yeah.
have to. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because I like to keep it just optimistic and positive. But like, all right, so let's get into just more, Zak Gabor, from a fun and enjoying life standpoint. So when it comes to, okay, simple strength physio, I like, why was that your brand? You used to power lift, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Very good.
I
I
got I
like
got
it.
I got a 540 deadlift under my belt.
There you go.
Um so I mean, to be honest with you, like, and even in 2024, like that name's actually pretty fire because it really does resonate with, it always kind of resonated with my core values, which was like rehab should be as simple as possible, like no simpler than it needs to be. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so like boiling down these complex problems with simple solutions, strength biased, like that's my main mode of delivery, is like exercise, building strength physically, emotionally, so whatever. um yeah, so that, I mean, that was sort of why I named it that, and it definitely still holds true to this day. Like those are still kind of my biases and my values,
What do you
just more
uh
expanded.
what do you do now for fun, for movement? And I know you play still playing tennis?
Yeah, so I play tennis once or twice a week. That's super fun, honestly. I think that like powerlifting was really fun. I've kind of done different modes of fitness because I think it's like just the skill development piece is really fun. So like from basic barbell lifting into crossfitting, then there was a strict Olympic weightlifting phase. Then I was an endurance boy and doing triathlons for a few years. And then I got into powerlifting for a few years. And now, current day, it's kind of in purgatory between powerlifting and like picking up tennis,
Mm-hmm.
and like not really feeling super inspired at the gym. And
Mm-hmm.
now, like, playing tennis twice a week anchors my training and kind of gives me like a reason, like a fun reason and motivation, where like the purpose of my training is to help me stay healthy and improve my tennis game. And I think just having a physical practice to commit to is so fun. And like, dude, life's fucking short. Like, it's just fun to play. And for me, like, just getting to go be a child and play twice a week is such an important part of my weekly routine.
I think the biggest thing we do is we stop thinking we're a child, like, because we're just big children. Like, you just look at
Oh,
people's behavior.
massive child. And I asked Steph, will, like, it's so funny. Like, we go over to her house with her 12-year-old nephew, and it's like, corporate needs you to find the difference between these two pictures.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're the same, you know. She's like, you're 12. And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I am.
I mean, I don't want that to change because, like, honestly, you just feel like there's a lot of like spiritual teachings that tell us to be childlike because children don't think like, man, the problem with youth sports today is not the kids, right? Is the
Right.
parents. The problem with people in their 30s is not that they're 30, it's that they think they're old, right? And they're
Yeah.
not playing
Yep.
anything, right? You
Mhm.
did mention something that I want to like tackle because it is something that I think a lot of us go through, and it's this like lull in the desire to like train or exercise, right? And
Yeah.
tennis has been good to kind of bring back some of the need to do it. But like, why do you think, or why did you go through that lull? And then what do you think helps people get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was always rooted in just like wanting to be physically healthy and like lay down bricks for my health span and lifespan. um but I think like coming out of COVID, it just like made training more of a burden at times with like some of the uh barriers and constraints that were in place. And I don't know, I guess I just like it it became a little bit unmotivating, and I don't really necessarily know. I mean, I really was just getting dragged out by my friend to go play tennis one day, and ever since that day, I kind of got rehooked to it, and that sort of kickstarted my process. So I just think, I don't know, for people, I think just finding hobbies where you can express what you're doing in the gym, and like, to me, that's the ultimate key to make it more salient for people.
Yeah. In my opinion, if you're not getting paid to do your thing, that's a physical activity thing. It, like you need to be doing something to play in conjunction with it. Like there's just way too many powerlifters, and this is probably comes from my own like I mean when I did like a starting strength linear progression, and it's like it's a
Yep.
great tool, but like one of the coaches that I was influenced by early on was like, no, you shouldn't be doing any cardio, you shouldn't be doing any play, like you need to
Right.
just, and it's like no, I like now I'm like who gives a rip, like
Yeah.
I would rather a continue to move in ways that allow me to be capable. I mean, I played rugby after doing like after going through like my strength, my powerlifting phase, and I played rugby again, and I was like way stronger, and that was good. But I
Yep.
moved and I felt awful. Like I moved like garbage.
Oh, I mean, to be honest with you, that was one of the reasons why I moved away from powerlifting, because I was like, all right, well, I always wanted to deadlift over 500 pounds. Check.
Yeah.
Um, I can't really put my socks on in the morning without getting onto my bed and doing a happy baby pose. Um, and I kind of just want to get more athletic.
Yeah. And I think part of it is like my understanding now, and this is why I'm drawing. And I'm going to ask you this question too, because I'm learning from people like Angus Bradley, some of these other guys that are not PTs,
Right.
and you know just like training physical qualities and like movement expression and stuff, and you know like powerlifting, the game is getting as stiff as possible basically,
Sure.
right? And
Yep.
like athleticism, you can be really strong and still move, but you got to maintain like some of these physical quality expressions while you train.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a trade-off there. It's not a very big trade-off, and I think what people have done is think it's like a bigger trade-off than it really is. Like honestly, if you can't jog a mile or ride a bike 30 minutes and it have a negative effect on your strength training, like you're probably just out of shape, like right,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
so we need to think about this a little bit more critically. But when it comes to like what, and I also have had to check my own biases, like, and it's really been evident in a lot of my programming in the last few years is like it was pretty like very strength dominant, and
Hmm.
now it's more movement dominant. Like it's still
Yeah, it's
heavy and hard, right? But it's like
totally.
let's get some variety in here, and like let's have some fun, and people like it, like they just do.
Well, yeah, it's actually a really important point to talk about, because, like, again, like when you kind of are going through your post functional boy era and you're like mobility, like who does mobility work? Like, just do your lifts, whatever. Where it's like now I'm utilizing some of those different drills within my programming. And I think that it more so speaks to, I guess, like a big theme of my programming for especially a lot of folks with chronic issues who have been avoiding certain things, is like expanding their movement variability, where I think there's like a sweet spot where it doesn't need to be so extreme that we're like doing a ton of shit that's all over the place. But I think beyond just our staple lifts, it's good to mix in some different drills that are just getting them moving differently and expanding their base of competencies.
100%. And I also just think like your warm up should be like a play time, like you know whatever that looks like, whether that is like if you have buddies around the guy I referred to Jokum, Austin Jokum. He's like, what we do is we play spike ball or we play like dodgeball, right? And it's like,
No,
yep,
that's like at the gym that I work at 2 days a week doing cash pay PT. It's in a strength and conditioning facility, and they all their group fitness classes start with like 5 to 10 minutes of play, like
yeah,
spike ball, soccer, juggling, whatever.
yeah, yeah. Because I mean, there's like literally play is like, in my opinion, like the best form of meditation because like you're just literally gonna play, right? And especially if
Yeah,
you can get
you're
out of
just
your
being.
yes, if you can get out of like the hard part about tennis is like so I grew up playing soccer and I appreciated about that was the flow of the game, right? Like
Yep.
you're if you do kind of screw up, like just hustle your ass back and like, figure it out. Whereas like tennis, the big challenge for that is like the point to point nature of it, like where momentum and your brain can start to get in the way of
Yeah.
things, which I appreciate that from a mental training standpoint, right? Like,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
you got to learn to just play and have fun. And the other thing that I just think about when we've kind of touched on it in some ways is like you can't be so married to the outcome or just the like just the feeling of stuff. Right? Like this is one of the things that I think a lot of us are getting into when it comes to helping people navigate like longer term pain is we we think like it's kind of like lifting weights. It's like you got to go and then you got to put it down and let yourself recover from it or and come back and do it again. Where Alan Gordon brings this up in The Way Out. It's like he would teach people like somatic tracking and then they would try to be somatic tracking like all the time, right? And
Yeah.
it's like instead of just learning to like feel yourself and like trust that you're okay is really hard. Um and that's kind of the qualitative nature of the stuff we talk about that it's really hard to teach people like through Instagram, right? Like we have to like have direct relationships with people like, what do you have any comment on that? I'm just kind of spitballing. I'm sorry.
Um, yeah, not necessarily. It's yeah, no comment at this time, sir.
That's all right. That's okay. What do you think of Greg Lehman's like kind of this is one thing I had in my brain. So do you follow Rachel Zoffness at all, like the pain psychologist?
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
I don't really know Greg Lehman's full stance on this, but it kind of he kind of makes it seem like like you don't have to think like do kind of a cognitive behavioral therapy type of approach to pain. But I kind of think what we do is kind of cognitive behavioral therapy just in the nature of like helping people see the options that they have and maybe moving through
Yep.
it. Do you think all pain goes to the brain? I mean, wait, we know this, but like,
Well, I mean, dude, it's this is something where, like, I mean, you look back at like Simple Strength Physio, Zach, and like I had quotes from Adrian Lowe that's like, pain is from the brain 100% of the time, and it's like maybe, but that's also, I think, painting a little bit of an inaccurate truth because, like, it creates this narrative that it is like very, very brain centric, where that is obviously a critical piece of the puzzle.
mhm,
But it kind of just shifts the blame from like body to brain, where
yeah,
it's like, so I've moved away from that kind of paradigm where I still appreciate, of course, and I'm targeting that, but again, through the Trojan horse of exercise. So I think the ultimately for me, my stance and like when I think about people like Greg, I mean, Greg's like a seemingly like really agnostic guy in terms of not really committing to any one stance really hardcore, where he just is like okay to challenge like a bunch of different things, which is good. And I think with someone like Dr. Zoffness, I think the overall message is really good and I support it. But it's very patient specific because I think as a whole, like, I don't think we need to be so overly explicit with some of those things for every person that has chronic or recurring pain issues. And I think there's more subtle ways that we can target some of these things, like implicitly, versus like very explicit sit down talks on pain neuroscience education and this and that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
no, I think it's a good indication and it's a good like you're you're leaning into the fact that every model has constraints or is imperfect, right? Like no model is complete, and it really is. This is the other thing I will say. Like, yeah, I would have 30-minute conversations with new evaluations on me not saying me not saying that it was in their brain, but like talking about like pain neuroscience education when probably
Yeah.
looking back on it now, the better approach would have just been, and I did do this, so I can't beat myself up too much, but like let's just go get moving and let's find ways for you to move without so much pain or worry or
Well, and
fear, right?
I think what I do now more so is like you're able to embed just key messages
Yeah.
about the nature of pain as opposed to like a whole ass essay on pain neuroscience education and how your brain is just an alarm. And sometimes the alarm is overly sensitive. And so when you're feeling pain, it's just a sensitive alarm where it's like, okay, maybe in certain contexts that's not wrong and it's partially true, but I don't know, it kind of creates this almost new linear explanation of pain where it's more of like, hey, here are some key messages we understand. Pain is not always a 100% accurate indication of tissue damage. Pain is not always a 100% accurate representation of you just did something wrong or you just messed up your tissues. Where, I talked with someone the other day who has back pain, and her MRI report found multiple levels of mild bulging discs. She's 60, right? And she's like, well, I was just nervous to do body weight squats because I didn't want to make anything worse. And it's like just helping them understand, cool, like if you experience some pain with that, you're probably not further damaging the tissues in your body. It's in that case, it's probably more of a sensitivity issue and it's more irritable. And so like you can convey key messages like that without it being a whole pain neuroscience education talk.
Yeah, here, read this paper and come back to me, right? Like, I think the other thing that I'm learning to do too, and is being okay with taking the first few. It's just like, and this is a skill, I think, meeting people where they're at and allowing like some time to like figure out the person's psychology a little bit. Like, how are they going to respond to this, right? How
Yeah,
much?
you might have some nerds, you might have someone that wants to nerd out hardcore on it. And
Yeah,
at that point it's like, okay, go off.
yeah. And I had a guy who he found me from a post that I did on like pain psychology. His powerlifting coach like said, "Hey, check out this post." He booked a consult call. We talked for an hour and a half, like
Yeah.
just and I'm like, "Dude, I don't think you need me. I think you need to go like watch these things and like and maybe I gave him some other resources. I'm like, if you're having problems in 6 weeks, like hit me back up. But it's
Yeah.
like there's I think we kind of traced back some steps
Yeah.
and he you could just tell that light bulbs were flickering, right? And that was good.
Hmm.
Like, and he trusted me pretty quickly, right? And like
Right.
that's another big contributor to this stuff is like, all right, how much do you trust the person in front of you in a good way? So all right, I want to wrap up with like what's grinding your gears most when it comes to like narratives or because what happens is there's a cyclical nature of this stuff and like one thing kind of maybe gets squashed and then another arises. Is there anything like that that you're noticing or are you not letting
Um,
things grind your gears? What's that look
I'm
like?
honestly not. I'm honestly. I've developed way too many gray hairs from like caring way too much and letting it really piss me off. Where it just, I don't know. It doesn't like. It's, I guess, in a way, kind of sad. I'm like desensitized to it, and on one hand, and on the other hand, I think I'm just really hyper focused on, okay, my mission has always been, well, what can I do about it? Well, I'm trying to grow this company so I can influence as many motherfuckers as possible to combat the shitty misinformation.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just at a place of peace now where our business is getting traction and I'm able to kind of just be so focused on that it's giving me the peace of mind where obviously I'll still see stuff that's just like, oh my God, like that's so flagrant, but it's like, honestly, I don't know. It's just, it has served me so poorly when I've gotten so worked up over it that I needed a channel to pour into. And, you know, a few years ago when things were a little bit muddier with our business, like it was definitely, I was in a really frustrated place because it's like I'm sitting here trying to do the right thing, but like struggling to even make a viable business out of it. And so that would really grind my gears. But we're moving in the right direction. So I feel at peace. Shout out Shelly.
Shelly, yeah. I have not actually worked with Shelly. I did consult calls with it. I do go to therapy and I appreciate Shelly a ton. Um, it's crazy because I was just gonna ask you like what has helped you do that, and then you basically alluded to like inner work, right?
Yeah,
Which
working with an amazing mental health professional that, helped me confront a lot of my anger, resentment, frustration,
yeah,
self-doubt, comparison syndrome, like all of it. Like just being able to confront it.
yeah,
Super best thing I ever fucking did. And,
yeah,
that's when our business started to get traction and take off.
yeah. I think the thing I always come back to is like I could spend my time worrying about what other people are doing or being frustrated externally, and
Hmm.
it's okay to do that, but
Yeah.
really all I can do is figure out how to get better. And like
Yeah, or do something about it.
yeah, yeah,
What am I like? Okay, like it's cool. You're right. Like complain, cool, but like do something about it if you're going to complain.
I can't remember who says it. Maybe it's Seth Godin or somebody's like, but the best way to complain is to make stuff, right? And
Yeah. Hmm.
like, and it's like, yeah, like, and at the end of the day, like, if you're doing good work, and the hard part is there might be a lag, right? But I just have also seen people who are doing good work, but they're doing it from this place of like anger and frustration with other
Yep.
people. They're trying to change the world
Right.
when they haven't looked at themselves enough to like
Yeah.
move forward. Um,
Yep.
because when you're trying to help people and you like yourself, it's better, right?
Oh
When you're
yeah.
trying to help people and you don't like yourself, people can feel that. It kind of goes back to being authentic, right?
Yep.
So no, dude, this is good. I appreciate you taking the time on this Tuesday.
Yes,
Pitch
sir.
yourself for me.
Oh God. Well, I'll plug myself. You can learn more or message me always at my personal Instagram, Zak Gabor, ZakGabor.dpt. That's where my personal account, my long game health and performance, my remote rehab company that I run, small scale, but it's all through that. And then when I'm not there, all hands on deck for clinical athlete, the continuing education and community that I help co-found and run. And we it's really taken a decade to get to this point, but we finally, being in the online space and having a bunch of different products, some that have been good, some that have totally whiffed, we really feel like we are have this amazing product now, which is a combination of an amazing curriculum that Quinn has developed around exercise prescription, but again, kind of EXRX is the Trojan horse where it's so much more than that. It's not really that doesn't do it justice because it embeds all of the values of critical thinking, communication skills, all of that good stuff. So it's the curriculum combined with competencies, community, mentorship. It's awesome. So yeah, that's what we're doing with our certified athlete or oh my god, certified clinical athlete provider program. It's been a long time coming, but we got some good traction with it, so we're pumped.
Yeah, booyah! You're doing good work. Appreciate you. Appreciate the people you've built around you, the tribe
Word.
you're creating, and I think that is our next wave, though, is the imposter syndrome around exercise prescription. I'm calling it, and I think you're doing a good job of combating that because I think that's another
Yeah.
thing that people are like,
Yeah, that's a whole that actually would have been a good topic for today, like going off of Greg Lehman's post about like imposter syndrome around exercise prescription. And I'll say short and sweet, I think the biggest thing is just simply reconciling more of a kinesiopathological model of exercise again to a more simplified version of it, but it we can't sit here and act like it doesn't take dedication and having some layers of understanding to do it in a good job. So I think
yep,
it's a balance.
100%. Next time we'll bring you
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
I appreciate your
Bet.
time. I wish I would have touched on it earlier, and we probably should have, but also like we kind of, I think about it this way, dude. In the beginning, it's just a squat, and then it's all sorts of these other things, and then it's a squat again, right? And
Right, but for different reasons. And so
exactly,
I think that's why it is really important to add depth to your understanding.
Yep. 100%.
Well
All right,
said.
man. I appreciate you a ton. Thanks for doing this.
Yep.
Have a good one. Enjoy the
Yes,
rest of your day.
sir.
Peace.
Peace.